the bit that shows at the front, yes? Not the bit that's going to go inside, unless you use very thin fusing and you want to do both sides. There is a choice there, but in this instance we're going for just fusing. So where you cut 2 fronts, you fuse one of them. Where you cut 2 pair of back waistbands, you fuse 1 pair.
And
yeah?
you fuse the front piece.
It's the front piece that you're going to connect to the skirt.
Okay, because
yeah?
logically, my mind would think fuse the back one because it's not going to show.
Well, except that you want the skirt waistband to look neat, so by fusing the front, the seam allowance isn't going to show through so much.
Oh, okay.
So all the workings of the skirt are not so intrusive.
Right,
okay? So that's the thinking behind it. Right, I've got here on the back, sew the centre back seam. CB stands for centre back, everybody happy with that? And start from the hem and go up to the notch where you know the zip's going to be. Yeah? Yeah?
Another question. I haven't, because if I was putting a zip in, I'd put it in on a closed seam. So
Why closed?
because it's easier.
Okay.
That's how I would do it.
Yeah. In truth, you wouldn't. You do that because that's the way you do it in
Yeah.
your work. So I'm not going to question that. But if this was in production, you
You'd leave
wouldn't
it
do
open.
it like
Okay.
that. The zip, unless of course, exception.
Yeah.
Exception being an invisible zip sometimes is put in first and then the seam
Yeah.
brought up
Yeah.
to it. So, but because we're not putting zips in,
Leave it
this
open.
is the reason I've done the order of work as I've done it.
Okay.
Because what I wanted to do was make sure by trapping the centre back, you've got the whole back skirt in front of you and there's no mixing up left, right, inside, outside, because with calico you don't know which is the right side and which is the wrong side. So can you see the thinking behind that? There are exceptions to every single rule. Right. Because we're working on the back, the next step, we did demonstrate it last week, is to connect the yoke to the skirt part. So pin it and sew it, yes? What we're doing is building the back skirt. And then pin and sew the fused waistband. Is this making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah? Ideally, you press your stitching before you carry on. You know, you press the actual stitching and then you press them up in position. Now with calico, you can get away with sometimes doing it with your fingers if you want to keep going, all right? But what you do want is the seam allowance up, facing upwards, not open in this case. For yokes, it's better not to be open, all right? Everything is debatable. But certainly if you intend to edge stitch it, which this red stitch is, you definitely need them facing upwards, yeah? Okay. So that's the back ready up to here, up to the waist, okay? Now we turn it over. I forgot to even mention sewing the hem on here. Right, on the front, and I forgot to mention sew the darts. So if you want to add in there, sew the darts on the front skirt. Sew front
Where's that going?
darts.
Oh,
As soon as you pick up the front skirt. I was so concerned with structure and what goes with what, I forgot to, yeah,
When you do darts,
inwards, inwards,
I assumed everything went
no,
to
no,
the back.
to inwards. So whether they're on the back or the front, they face the middle. Yeah?
Got a nice
Okay. Once your darts are done, pin and sew the fused waistband of the front, and I've made a point of making sure you match the centre front notch of the waistband to the centre front notch of the skirt, and then the other notches as you go along. Yes? Alright. And then you lay right side to right side so that you can stitch the seams from inside out. Right side front on top of right side back. Yeah? Match your notches. Where you've got to be particularly careful is when you sew up the sides, that you follow the seam allowance, and even put your needle, as you machine the hem and the needle comes to this notch here, allow yourself to keep the needle in and just slightly turn, so you then follow the other direction of the side seam. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Right, let's do here, because that's all sewn in. There's a seam, okay, like that. On your tapered skirt, the seam comes in and goes out like that.
Oh, you mean keep it in?
So in other words, you sew up to that point, leave the needle there, slightly adjust, and then come the other way. Has everybody got that? Yeah? You got that? Because the shape of your seam is doing that, always start at the hem, so you come up to where the hem change. Oh, you haven't changed your hem. We have to watch that. I'll come back to you. And then make sure, otherwise you're going to end up with a curve there that never quite defines where the hem's going to turn up. Yeah? Okay. And then you need to join the waist pieces that aren't already attached to the skirt. Yes, so join the two side seams, and then we're going to pin this waistband and machine to the waistband of the skirt. Yeah, and then when you've done that, trim it through, flatten it so that the seam goes towards the facing, and you edge stitch. Okay?
So do you call that edge stitch under stitch as well? Is that the same thing?
Stay stitch, you're right. It could be, yeah. In this case, it's being used to hold a seam in place, so it's a stay stitch. Here, it's decorative, so you could call it an edge stitch because it's on the edge. But they're both doing
the same.
They both look the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, that gives it a different name. Stay stitch because it's got function. Here it's decorative.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other thing I forgot to say, turn the hem up and stitch hem. Yeah. Okay. I should be rewriting this.